Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Technique Tuesday. My name is Ali Board, and I am broadcasting live from my studio on the south coast of the UK, down here in what is today the beautiful county of Dorset. The sun is shining, spring is definitely here, and no one is more happy about all of those things than me, to be honest. Now, if you are watching live, thank you very much for taking the time to do that. I'm very grateful for all of that. I have the little YouTube chat window open. So I wanted to say a few hellos to you in a minute, but this morning we are going to be talking about masking fluid. And the reason that we're going to be talking about masking fluid is because I think I've changed my mind about what it is that I recommend. So I want to take you through what happened with that, why I've kind of come to that conclusion. I'm still not 100% on it, but I thought along the way it might be useful to talk about tools, to talk about papers, and all of those things that go with masking fluid, because it can be a little bit tricky at times. Now, if you are watching live, do feel free to join in the chat. If you're watching via catch up, you can leave me a comment. If you're watching on my blog, you can also leave a little observation there too. I try to reply to everybody if I possibly can, but I have some hellos to say, because I like to say hello to those people who are tuning in live. G'day, Julie. Lovely to have you here. Ali, good morning. Lita, hello to you. Stephen, and good morning to you. Rosie, bonjour. Hilary and Barbara and Linda. All of those things all of those things. All of those people. Thank you very much for taking the opportunity to tune in. It's really lovely to have you here. Who else is here? Fran is in sunny Weymouth. Isn't it always sunny in Weymouth, Fran? It's great to have you here. Right, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping, if I may. Want to take you to the website so that you can see where to find things, because there's some information today that might help you with various parts of what it is that we are going to be talking about. So let's take you over to that website. There it is. You go to www.learningtopaint.co.uk and you will find the homepage, which is what you're seeing right now. And the bit that you need to look for, can you see? Yours might look a little bit different to this in terms of whether you're watching it on a tablet or a smartphone, but you need to find the menu, and in that you will find the links to my blog, YouTube, and there's the Technique Tuesday blog. So you can go over to there, and you can go over to there at any point after this live broadcast to see what it is that we've been talking about. Last month we talked about gesso and the various types of gesso. I hope you enjoyed taking part in all of that. Let's have a look at today. So as I said, we're talking about masking fluid, and as you can see in my first sentence, the nemesis to all watercolorists. You will be able to watch the footage back there when I have finished this broadcast. And there's some little links at the bottom there to some of the things that I'm using, because some of the things that I use are sometimes deemed a little bit unusual. But one of the things that you are possibly going to want to go to is the launch of my new paints, the Alison Seaboard collection. And you will see that there is a range of 16 colours there at the moment, lots for you to enjoy. And there will be more on the horizon. I just thought I would start with the launch of 16. So plenty for you to dig around to on that website, lots for you to enjoy, lots of free content there for you to look at too. If you have any problems getting onto that website, then just drop me a line, ali@learningtopaint.co.uk, and I will help you happily. Now, I understand from the live chat that a couple of you are having some problems with the volume. I don't think it's me. My microphone is absolutely turned up to maximum. So just headphones maybe, that might be a way to listen in. But let's take you to the overhead camera, because there's so much stuff that I want to share with you this morning. Hopefully going to be useful to you. Who have I missed? Who have I missed? I've said Penny, good morning. Good morning, lovely to have you here. Right, let's take you to that overhead camera. Also, because we have new technology, we have palette cam there as well. And I can isolate that too if you want to see something in close up. But also when we are in the overhead, then you'll be able to see it. You'll be able to see me working on that too. Now, let's have a think first about masking fluid. I'm going to be kind of thinking out loud with today's demonstration, because what is masking fluid? What did I used to recommend? What are the things that I am thinking about changing? This is masking fluid. It comes in a huge variety of guises and quantities. And the idea of it is that you use it for masking out, for reserving areas of your paper where you want to be able to paint over the top of it and then peel it off. Now, I do know that everything that I say this morning is going to come with a sort of giant caveat, because there are variations. So, for example, Winsor & Newton make a masking fluid that is actually, it stays put. It's called permanent masking fluid. And I'm going to be talking about the removable kind. So I absolutely understand that you might have variations on what it is that I'm talking about. But if you do have any observations, then just share them in the chat. I'd love to hear about them. Now, when you use masking fluid, you apply it to the paper. You do whatever it is that you've got to do over the top of it, and then traditionally you peel it off, revealing what is underneath. Now, a lot of the time that is white paper, but you can use it over the top of colours too. So if you did a very pale wash of something and you wanted to reserve those pale highlights, then you could paint your masking fluid over the top, keep washing the colours until you get to the darkest part, and then peel it off, and you would have the pale colours rather than just the white. Now, there's lots of issues with masking fluid. There's issues to do with its longevity in the bottle. There are issues to do with what sort of paper makes the best paper to paint on, and we're going to try out several kinds this morning. And there's also issues around what sort of tools you might want to use to apply it. And I've got a variety of them here. So we're going to test out lots of theories, see what happens, and then I will maybe by the end decide whether I should change my mind about the type of masking fluid that I recommend. Now, the type of masking fluid that I have recommended in the past, I don't have any of this morning. And the reason that I don't have any of it is because it goes off really quickly. Now, there's lots of facts and figures. Lots of different artists will say to you, it goes off in 2 years, it goes off in 6 months, it goes off the minute that you take the lid off, all of those kind of things. So it does make it a rather frustrating product, because if it's not something you use all the time, you've got to know that it degrades. And not only does it degrade in the bottle, but of course the potential is that you'll paint it onto your surface, and it will then degrade because of the degradation of it. It might not be able to peel off the surface, which is alarmingly frustrating, isn't it? So I used to recommend the kind of the thin versions of masking fluid. So I used to recommend the SAAs, the Pebeo Frisket, Liquid Frisket. Any of those. I wasn't a big fan of the Winsor & Newton and the Daler Rowney ones, just because they seemed to me, you may have a different experience, but they seemed to me to go off a bit faster, and they came in quite large bottles, and I never even got halfway down a bottle. So what I used to say to people was join forces with somebody that you know, buy a bottle between yourselves, and then kind of decant it out. So that is what I used to say. And then just before Christmas, I was having a tidy up of my studio, and I came across this bottle of masking fluid. Now, this is masking fluid made by Schmincke. And I still haven't quite got to the bottom. Schmincke seem to have more than one masking fluid. I think they all do the same things. I think it's the difference between the one that dries clear and the ones that dry blue. But I haven't quite got to the bottom of that. Translating their website out of German is not my strong point, all of those kind of things. So haven't quite got to the bottom of it. However, I found this bottle of Schmincke masking fluid and I saw it in the cupboard, right at the back of my cupboard. Good morning, Lindsay. Morning, Anita. And I thought, oh, crikey, look at that. It's a huge bottle in comparison to some of the bottles that I normally use. And I thought, well, that's just going to have gone off. I was trying to, before I grabbed it out the back of the cupboard, I was trying to remind myself as to how old I thought this bottle of masking fluid was. And I was thinking to myself, it's got to be at the very least 10 years old, this bottle of masking fluid. So when I thought, well, I will just have a look because it's a glass bottle as opposed to a plastic bottle. I thought, well, I'll just take the lid off it and I'll just see what it looks like. And to my absolute surprise, it was still pretty fluid, pretty liquid. I did notice that it was a bit thicker, but when I then went to do a bit of a comparison with a brand new bottle of masking fluid, I noticed that the consistency between the new bottle and my old bottle was not a lot different. And so I thought to myself, right, well, maybe this masking fluid is still okay. And I did a few tests and it seemed to be. Now, this morning I am absolutely going to put it through its paces. So this is where it might all go terribly, terribly pear-shaped. But I thought I would put it through its paces. But the first part of it was really that I was amazed that this bottle I knew was at least 10 years old and seemed to be okay. It was at the back of a very dark cupboard, but it has been used. There is still a gap for air to form in there. It's not right to the top. So it did have the potential to go off. But we'll see what happens. Now, Rosie is saying there are loads of videos about making your own masking fluid. If it works, you only need make small quantities. Anyone tried? No, absolutely have not made that, Rosie. And that is something that I should investigate, isn't it? Maybe I'll add that to the to-do list and we can come back. If any of you have any information about that, want to share any links to do with that, that would be interesting, wouldn't it? So this is my Schmincke masking fluid. Now, there's a couple of things that I just want you to sort of set that aside temporarily because I want to go through a few papers. Now, again, like I said, there's a huge caveat to go with this because these are things that I can only say in my experience. In my experience, I tend to find that very soft surfaced papers, like these handmade papers, are not really conducive to using masking fluid. They are, like I said, very soft, very textured on the surface. You can probably see in the camera. They don't take well to masking fluid. It's not that you can't paint it on. It's not that you can't wash it over the top. But, excuse me, trying to remove it is a bit of a challenge. So I am discounting that style of paper this morning. And instead, I have a selection here of things that in the past have worked really well for me. So let me take you through those papers. So I have Fabriano Artistico here. This is one of my favorite watercolor papers, pretty hard wearing. This is quite a thick sheet. This is 600 gram, but it will work the same on a 300 gram. Then I have two versions of a paper made by Hahnemühle. Now, this one has 100% cotton. The Fabriano Artistico, by the way, is also 100% cotton. This is Hahnemülle's Expression paper that has 100% cotton. And this is Hahnemülle's Harmony paper, which is a cellulose-based paper, has no natural content, natural cotton content at all. But lots of the time, you will find that these papers tend to work better with masking fluid. They're that little bit harder. They're that you can kind of bully them more. And so the equivalent of this might be something like your Bockingford or your Langton, things like that. So I've got those two to experiment on as well. And then I've got a Tilsids. So Tilsids is my family business. It's the company that is well over 100 years old now. It is where I first started my career with my parents, where we sold stationery and art materials. We've brought it back recently to be an online presence, and this is something that we produce. So this is a trial pad. And the reason that I pulled it up is because we've got this little selection of papers. Now, when you buy a trial pad from us, it's not always the same selection, but it's a good way of testing papers out. And so I've got an Arches Aquarelle, a Canson Heritage, a Clairefontaine, a Bockingford, all of those kind of things. So I could test them out on that as well. Trial pads are brilliant for seeing what materials work and for you kind of deciding if you want a new paper or you don't really know how something works. They're fabulous for using in that way. So I've got those papers that I'm going to try the masking fluid out on. And I've also got a selection of tools here. Now, these are my two favourite tools for applying masking fluid. I do apologise, I've got a terrible cough this morning. Now we've got a brush here. This is just an old brush that I use for applying masking fluid. And yes, masking fluid does ruin your brushes, but there are two additional products that I use to help me with that part of the process. The first, this looks terribly posh and made for service, but it really isn't. This is a travel soap. And the idea is that you wet the brush before you start. So put the brush into the water and you rub it on your bar of soap. You can do the same with washing up liquid as well. I just find a bar of soap more portable. You rub it around on that surface. It coats the bristles in the soap. And then when you use it with the masking fluid, you should find that that masking fluid washes away nice and easily. If you don't really fancy going through all of that faff to coat your brush in advance, then you also have this product, which is amazing. This product, I can't even begin to tell you how amazing this is. This is masking fluid remover, but it is so much more than that. This is made by a company called Zest-it. And so it smells like orange zest, and you can use masking fluid with it. You can let masking fluid dry on your brushes and leave it in the bottle for, well, I usually do it overnight if I've made a bit of a boo-boo and it's really coated in masking fluid. Leave it in the bottle, and then in the morning you can just peel that masking fluid away. Smells delightful, does not smell like a chemical at all, much kinder to the environment, all of those sorts of things, all those things that we love. It says on here, soak stiffen brush in masking fluid remover for 10 plus minutes, remove gooey residue, repeat, wash hands and brush with soap and water. So super easy to use. This is also brilliant for removing sticky labels from stuff. And, you know, when you're trying to peel a label off something like a gift or something like that, and you think, oh, it's just left that horrible sticky mess on it. This is brilliant for removing those things too. So I thought I would tell you about that because that's brilliant. So you could apply it with a brush. We'll come back to that brush later. But you also might want to use a ruling pen. Now I've got two different sizes of ruling pen here. Who knew until recently that there were such a thing as two different sizes of ruling pen? I'm going to show you them in close up, because often it's a bit confusing as to how you use them. So this is your kind of traditional ruling pen. You tend to find these in compass sets or drafting sets. As you can see, chock-a-block with masking fluid residue. There's a wheel on the top which you move, so keep an eye on those blades at the top. If you can see, the further apart I move that wheel, the more the blades separate. And if I tighten that wheel, can you see the blades narrow as well? You want the blades for standard masking fluid, and we'll come back to what I mean by standard masking fluid. You want the blades, do not let them touch, it won't work then. You want to be able to sort of pass your fingernail through that gap. The masking fluid I'm using today, that Schmincke masking fluid, is, as you can see, a thicker consistency. So it does have the potential to be frustrating to use with a ruling pen because it might not glide on. So I'm going to separate the blades a touch more. And then this is my large capacity ruling pen. You can see it's huge. I've only been playing with one of these just recently, but look at that. You can get a really whopper of a line, can't you? Isn't that fun? And the other thing that I like about this particular ruling pen is that I'm starting to get good old arthritis in my fingers, and I find that little wheel, a bit like the lids on tubes of paint, really quite fiddly. And so it really does frustrate me on a cold morning like this morning. This wheel, much bigger, so I can get hold of it and possibly easier to clean as well. You can also get ruling pens that have a swivel blade at the back. Used to be made by a company called Jaycar. I don't know whether they still make one of those, so that you can separate the blades and clean them out. But they are expensive, those ruling pens. These ones tend to be a touch cheaper. So again, I'm going to separate that blade to be able to use. And the thing that not very many people tell you about using with a ruling pen is that you must, and I will show you, don't worry, you must dip it into the masking fluid. And then that gap that you see there needs to be facing the ceiling. If you use it this way round, which you might sort of assume because the wheel is at the top, you might assume that that's a thing. It's not going to run out of the pen. You need to have the pen on its side so that it delivers that line of masking fluid nice and tidily and cleanly. And we'll talk more about that as we do it. So that's your ruling pen. Obviously, there are loads and loads and loads of other tools that you might consider using. You might consider a colour shaper, larger brushes, more textured brushes. You could apply it with a sponge. Any of your mark making tools that you have can be used to apply your masking fluid. And of course, you're going to get different results. I'm just keeping it simple this morning because we've got enough to discuss. Now, let's start with, what should we start with? Running out of desk space as usual. Let's start with good old Fabriano Artistico. Like I say, one of my favourite papers to use. It will take all manner of battering from me and still seems to come up working absolutely fine. So which ruling pen shall I use? I'm going to use my big one because I haven't had the opportunity to use that, and I will use the brush as well. And then the things that I've got to compare, I've got my 10-year-old masking fluid, which let's see whether that works. So we've got that bottle. I've got a brand spanking new bottle of the same product but blue. Now this is a very bright blue, which would worry me a touch. So you've got this kind of conundrum with your masking fluid. Do you have something that is the same colour as the paper so that when you're adding colour, it doesn't affect your colour decisions, but of course it's really difficult to see where you apply it? Or do you go for something that is really, really easy to apply because you can see it clearly, it's going to show up, but that blue might affect the decisions that you make about the colours that you apply because it's going to become part of the colour mix? I can't answer that for you. It's sort of different things on different days, isn't it? But I have those two. So we've got the old bottle. We've got the brand spanking new bottle. I've also got the same product, but in a pen bottle. So if I take that lid off, you can see it's got a little nozzle there, and I'm going to see if I can deposit it that way. As always, look at that messy pup. Let's just put that over there. So should we start with this? I'm going to annotate them as I go as well so that I know exactly what it is that I've used. These pen bottles I struggle with a little bit, I have to say. As you can see, they're a bit blobby. Let's stick it in the close-up camera so you can see. And we better drop this piece of paper down so you can actually see. So can you see it's quite a fat line? It's quite thick and chunky. I struggle to get it to go on thinly. Perhaps I'm being a bit heavy-handed with it. Who knows? But it's really easy to dispense. And then, of course, you don't have those what tool am I going to use decisions. So a couple of questions coming in already. Rabina is saying, Zest It, one of my favourite products. Linda saying, does the larger ruling pen hold more fluid? It's frustrating when the thin pen runs out quickly. Linda, to be honest, I haven't really played with this. It depends on the viscosity of the liquid that you put in, because obviously you've only got 2 blades. They're being held by surface tension. The liquid is being held by surface tension in there. But we'll certainly see. We'll have a go. Rosemary is saying, if the old one is 10 years old, will it be the same formula now? Who knows? The only way I can do it is to keep this one for 10 years and see if it's the same. But I'm hoping that I'll be able to tell from the various application techniques, but maybe I should email Schminke and see if they will be the same. But it's a good point. Well made, Rosemary. So that's the bottle. Let's just label that one. This is the 10-year-old masking fluid. I should call it vintage, shouldn't I? If it was wine, you'd be describing it that way. So large ruling pen into. So can you see it is quite thick, which could pose a problem for delivering it in a ruling pen. But we'll pop it down. Look at that gap facing the ceiling. Oh, and it dispenses beautifully, I have to say. Let's see if we can get that down. So gap facing the ceiling at all times. Does seem to be holding quite a bit, Linda, doesn't it? So that's quite interesting. You're right, ruling pens can be frustrating when they run out. But did you see all that time I had the gap facing the ceiling? Let's put the lid on that because I'm a terror for spilling stuff. So this is, I'm going to put it in inverted commas, old masking fluid. Let's give my ruling pen a bit of a clean. I put some tissue paper down. So can you see the white is tricky to see? It is difficult. So it's not going to be helpful in the application process. But of course, it's not going to affect my colour decisions. And then this is the, hello, Mum. Good morning, Mum. My mum is saying vintage like me. Not true at all. Right. So this is the blue one. So this is the brand spanking new one. So the consistency looks identical to the old one. It's sticking to the blades in the same way. Let's see if it goes down the same. Looks to me like it does. If you're thinking, why is that line not perfectly straight? It's to do with the paper. I'm working on a very rough surfaced paper. If I slow down the delivery, look, I get a much more fluid line. But at all times, the gap is still facing the ceiling, okay? So that's the bottle part of it. That is the old version of it. And then this is the new version of it. I've just got to clean my ruling pen in between sessions. So I flatten out my kitchen roll and I pass it between the blades to get it to come out, and then it should all be shiny. You can obviously wash this out in a pot of water. Just be really careful because the masking fluid will sit on the surface of the water. Don't then dunk your best painting brushes back in it. Now, the one way that I can really put this through its paces is the thing that you shouldn't ever do to masking fluid, which is to dry it with any heat. It just doesn't like it. It sets it very permanently, and then you've got the issue of will it come off? But we can't sit here waiting for masking fluid to dry. So I am going to push my luck with this. So I am going to use my heat gun, and even in saying that, a hairdryer is preferable to using a heat gun. So if this survives me heating it with a heat gun, I would say that that's pretty conclusive as well. So let's give it a waft. These lines should dry pretty quickly, in fact, almost instantly. These I can see are turning clear, but we've still got some big blobs. I might just have to bypass those when I wash some colour in a minute. I'm going to pop that one to one side. Let's try the Hanamulla Harmony paper. This is the cellulose-based paper. This is the one that is similar to like your Bockingford or your Langtons or things like that. And so I'm going to very quickly do the same thing. So, blob. Yeah, I'm not a fan of this bottle, it has to be said. So we've got the bottle being drawn on, and then I won't change any parameters. I'll use the same thing for each test. So this is the old version of stuff. Can turn it over. I do get a lot out of that ruling pen. I think Linda might be right. So there's the old one. If you're wondering why I put the lid on my ruling pen, I'm just going through one of those phases at the moment where I break everything or smash everything up. Took out my dining set last week and then got replacements for it and broke one of those as well. So I'm being super careful with the way that I handle things because I really don't want to end up with masking fluid down my dress today. So that was the vintage masking fluid. Here is the new masking fluid. So seem to be going on. The blue might be a touch thinner, but only a touch thinner. There's not really a lot to choose between them. So let's give that a bit of a blast. That's pretty good. Need to put that to one side. Seriously running out of space now. Because I've done a cotton-based one in the Fabriano Artistico, and I'm aware of our time together today. I'm going to skip straight to the Tilsids pad. What shall I pick out of this? Now, we've got an Arches Aquarelle, so a cotton-based paper, but this is hot pressed, this one at the top. So this will be interesting, won't it? Seeing if I can get masking fluid off of a very smooth paper. So this seems to like to blow a bubble when you first take the lid off. So I'm going to see if it will blow a bubble first. There's always a route through application, isn't there? Now this shows up better on the paper because the Arches is a little creamier. Now, I left my ruling pen filled with blue to one side. If I was using the masking fluid I used to recommend, it wouldn't come out. No, this is dried as well. So got to start again. I was wondering if it would even deliver while it was still wet, but it had started to set. So let's repeat the process. We're going for the vintage masking fluid in that one. Coming through there. And then we've got the blue, which I haven't wiped my ruling pen for. I'm going to need some new kitchen roll in a minute. Running out of edges with which to shove my ruling pen on. There we go. And we've got the blue version too. Now, while these are, I've rushed that one. While these are drying, I want to do one more test. And this is where I really push my luck with stuff. Because, let's give that a bit of a blast. Another thing that I used to say to people when talking about masking fluid was that you shouldn't thin it down. And the reason I used to say that was because if you think about it logically, if you thin out masking fluid with water and you then paint it onto the surface of your watercolour paper, the chances are that masking fluid is going to sink into the fibres of the paper. And then when you come to remove it, you possibly might struggle, which I think we'll all agree is pretty relatively sensible advice. But because this masking fluid is quite thick, this Schmincke masking fluid is quite thick, I was thinking, well, while we're here, what if I thin it with a bit of water? So I'm going to take my masking fluid brush, which I've hidden somewhere. There it is. And I'm going to take some of it, deposit it into this little metal dish here, and then add some water to it to thin it out to see if I can remove that too. So we are so pushing our luck with this. I've got some water over to one side, and actually I'm going to show you in palette cam just what happens to the surface of that water. Can you see it sort of congeals on the surface? And then if you stuck your very expensive painting brushes in that, they'd be covered in bits of masking fluid. Now, of course, this is a whole do as I say, not as I do type scenario. You didn't see me dip my brush in that in a minute, did you? So I've added some water to that masking fluid. I might just add a touch more to it. Let's see how we get us. Just put another scoopful or two even into there. I'm working intuitively in terms of how do you know how much to mix together. I really don't know how much to mix together. I'm just kind of playing it by ear. And then let's use the brush to paint that onto the Fabriano, and we'll see if it comes off. And there's no better test than that, really. Let's also dip our ruling pen into it. I think I'm going to need to tighten that now that the viscosity of this is thinner. Look at that. I mean, it goes on beautifully. I'll be quite upset if this doesn't work, because this might be an answer to so many things. And Linda P, I think you're right. I think I could get a lot more line work out of the larger ruling pen. But I can do some more tests with that. Right, let's give this a bit of a blast. Oh, Rosie's saying maybe thin it with nail varnish remover. That's interesting. Are you suggesting because it's a latex-based product that might work? I think because there are some masking fluids that are latex-free. So I don't know, Rosie. Rosie, you're asking brilliant questions this morning. Right, let's try this. So not only am I heating it with a heat gun, I've thinned it out with water as well. So this poor masking fluid is sitting in a corner crying because of the things that I've asked of it this morning. Okay, that's relatively dry. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to wash paint over every sample, dry it again and see if it will come off, because that is the only test. I just got to clear the decks a little bit. Now, for the purposes of this morning's demonstration, I am going to indulge myself and use my own brand of watercolour paints, which, like I said at the beginning of the demo, have come out recently. Because it's me and because nobody will be surprised, let's go for Dusky Violet, because that is going to be a nice rich colour that shows up easily. So I'm going to reach for a brush. Let's just go for a flat brush. So these are my imitation sable brushes that I'm using. And like I said, you didn't see me dip my brush into that pot of water that's full of masking fluid, did you? So let's agitate this a little bit and get some nice kind of colour swipes off of it. This is still wet up here with what came out of the bottle, but you'll soon see that the rest of it dried nicely. So let's swish it over the top of that masking fluid. You can see that it is repelling it, which is great. Let's really kind of make its life difficult. Let's see if we can tattoo the surface with our watercolour paint. This is far more times than I would ever touch a watercolour painting. I'm really trying to push my luck with it. And then over here on top of that, thinned out, freshly dried with a heat gun version. Okay, so it is repelling it. Interesting. This is lovely fine detail that I'm getting down here. Let's add some more water to that. I am obviously rushing it because for the purposes of a live demonstration, I would be much more careful than this with you know, if I was just working in the studio on my own. Let's find my other samples. So this is the Hahnemühle Harmony paper. So this is the cellulose-based paper. So again, we'll mix up some of that colour. I don't know that all of that bottle version is dry, but let's swish it over the top. So you can see the texture of the paper is quite different too. It's smoother than that Fabriano Artistico that I was using before. So we'll get that properly tattooed. I'm only not putting it over here because I don't think that bit of it is dry. So over there, and then we had the Arches, didn't we? The hot pressed, so they're super smooth. So effectively, we've got two different surfaces. I'm trying to tick all the boxes and hit all the parameters for you. That's definitely not dry. So I've got to be a bit careful with that. But let's get it over the top. I do not like hot press papers. I know that there are lots of you out there that really love a hot press paper because it's smooth and the colour glides on. But it makes me twitch, I'm not going to lie. This is much more my home ground. This is just scary. So the colour has gone on. And let's, like I said, let's push our luck again by heating it a second time to get the watercolour fixed. So that's drying up on the top. This is our Fabriano. I'll come back to that one in a minute. My heat gun doesn't want to reach all the way over here, but we'll do our best. So this is the Hahnemühle Harmony. That piece of paper is curling, incidentally, because it's only 180 gram. It's only really thin. Now, one thing that you do have to pay attention to when you're using masking fluid, when you use it on a big area, can you see the colour beads on the surface? You want to mop that up, really. The heat gun might get the majority of it, but you want to mop it up because otherwise you're going to move that colour into the pale area if you're an impatient being like me. Now, they do just need a quick blast. Let's have a look. I think that one is pretty dry. This one is still a bit wet at the top. And let's make sure that this section is super dry. And this one's still a bit damp around the edges too. Okay, so we have, just to recap, we have absolutely put this through its paces. We have used two brand new types of masking fluid and a vintage bottle. I have used them direct from the bottle and with a ruling pen. I've used it on Fabriano Artistico, Hahnemühle's Harmony, and Arches hot pressed. And I have also used it thinned out with some water, both applied with a brush and through a ruling pen, and I have heated them twice. So in normal terms, these are things that really push masking fluid to the edge of its viability, both because you don't particularly want to heat it, you don't particularly want to use old stuff, all of those kind of things. If you've used masking fluid a lot, then you may be going, but Ali, this can't possibly work. I don't know if it's going to work. Please believe me when I say I haven't done like hours of testing before I go live. The whole point of these broadcasts is that I think out loud and you get to see it happen in real time. if this doesn't work, it's not the end of the world. What I will have discovered is what papers work, what application tools work, what variations of this masking fluid work, all of that kind of stuff. So it's really good for me to be able to work these things out. And hopefully it's interesting for you to be able to see me do it out loud, as it were. Now, I'm not a fan of using my finger to take masking fluid off because I have put blisters on my fingers before doing it. If you have any kind of oils or creams or anything on your hand, you can seriously mess up the surface of watercolor paper. You can use a putty eraser, but it destroys a putty eraser. You can wrap your finger in masking tape to get it off, all of those kind of things. But there's a much easier solution, and that's a masking fluid eraser. One of these things, really kind of flexible rubber. This is good for getting sticky stuff off of surfaces as well. All of these things you can find on the website, by the way. Now let's take you through the order that I applied them in as well. So you've got the bottle, the vintage, the new blue. Let's use the masking fluid eraser. So that is the bottle version, came off very cleanly. In fact, I will show you in close-up cam because then you'll be able to see it in more detail. So there you can see it came off. Now the difference between the Schmincke masking fluid and other brands of masking fluid, can you see it sort of shatters into pieces? The other one sort of comes off in stringy fashion, but this one sort of breaks up, which I find interesting. Also doesn't make such a mess of your masking fluid eraser either. I'm going to come back to this one because this just makes me so nervous. This one is the new blue, and so should come off without any trouble at all, which it does. So that one works. That's all good, isn't it? Right, drum roll. Let's see if we can get the old version off. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. It is proving to want to stay attached a bit more, but I have got it off. I had to do a couple more passes with my eraser than I did for this one, but it has all come off. I'm going to come back to this because I'm not confident that is going to come away. So that was on the Fabriano Artistico. Let's bring in the Hahnemuhle so that you can see that. Just move a few things so that you can see. So we've got the bottle, the blue, and the vintage. So this is the bottle, which is now the paper. Is that the paper? No. It's just sort of shattered as it's come away. I thought I was taking the paint off as well, but I haven't. Again, that's why you need one of these in your life, because then you're not smudging anything. Let's go for the vintage. Oh, which is coming off very easily off of this surface. No hassles at all with that. And then the blue is coming off as well. And I'm just feeling my way around. No, nothing left on there. You can see how that is kind of shattering around it. It's not making that horrible kind of gooiness that other masking fluids potentially do. Then we've got the Arches. Now this is hot press, so it's dead flat smooth and also very thin. So this will make me twitchy. Hadn't dried properly because I was being a nightmare and trying to get it to happen quickly. Yeah, that has come off there. Oh, shall we try the vintage one off the hot pressed? Look at that. That's come off. Not a problem. And then this is the blue one. In actual fact, the blue one was tougher to get off than the vintage one. Don't know why, can't quantify that, but that's quite interesting. But it seems to have come off that. Okay. And then, shall we try this? This is mad. This is as mad as watercolouring gets, really, because this shouldn't work. But I'm a bit more hopeful because other things have worked. So this is the vintage one, thinned out with water and then applied with a brush and with a ruling pen. Okay, it is. I'm having to scrub quite hard, but it is coming away. I have a feeling that I wouldn't be able to leave that on for very long. But then you shouldn't really leave masking fluid on your paper for very long anyway. I know that you'll be out there going, yeah, but I've left it on for 6 months and it's come off. Yes, of course. There will always be instances. Actually, that's come off really well. There will always be instances where you can buck the trend. But generally speaking, you need to get masking fluid on and off in the same session. I'm sure... Well, I know for a fact I have too managed to get masking fluid off 6 months later, but I am pushing my luck with that. I colour me impressed, because I did not think that was going to be a thing. So let's get rid of all the detritus, and I'll do a quick recap for you. Get your questions in if you have any, don't forget. And I will tell you what it is that we're going to be doing next month as well. So we used the Schmincke masking fluid straight out of the bottle. Not a fan of the bottle. I think it deposits too much down, if I'm honest, but it's a nice, easy way to dispense it. If you don't have to, if you're not worried about waiting for it to dry, you can sort of leave it a while, or if you want a thicker application. Then I used my vintage bottle of Schmincke, which is at least 10 years old. I applied it with a ruling pen there. I did the same over here on the Hahnemuhl Harmony paper. I did the same here on the Arches Aquarelle, but this was the hot press, so this was the much thinner one. And then I thinned it out with water over here and used it with both a brush and with a ruling pen. Now, I don't know about you, but I find all of those things incredibly fascinating, because I was absolutely convinced that I wasn't going to be able to take it off. I thought that I knew that I would have issues with the bottle, because I've tried those bottle applicators before, and I was pretty sure that I wouldn't like it, and I still don't. My new big ruling pen seems to be doing the trick nicely, but so did the vintage thing, so did it across papers. I mean, this is the paper that I use more than any others. This is the Fabriano Artistico, and I've managed to get it off in all guises off of that surface. So that is fascinating. And I absolutely promise you, I didn't kind of check. I didn't sort of think to myself, oh, this needs to be the consistency. This is the first time I've played with my new big ruling pen. So that's staying, because I'm looking forward to, like Linda P was asking, will I be able to do more of it because it's a larger area? Don't know yet, but it seems to work perfectly well for masking fluid, so that's good. And the poor arthritis in my fingers is loving the bigger wheel. And it was good for me as well to kind of go through all of those tests to make absolutely sure that I was doing it across various surfaces, all of those kind of things, so that we get a nice overview of what happens. Now, I hope that was useful to you too. I'd be fascinated to know about your particular favourite masking fluids, about the tools that you like to use. Do leave me some comments. I promise that I will read all of them and get back to them. And like Ali says, it's helpful to have someone else doing the experimenting. Thank you. It's my fun place as well. And it's not like I don't have the stuff, is it? So our next Technique Tuesday is on the 1st of April. Despite it being April Fool's Day, I'm not trying to fool you. It will be at 10 o'clock UK time on the 1st of April. And we're going to be doing another experiment for that. This was a question that came from my art group, the All Aboard Artists, because I do tend to ask them quite a lot of things. And I said, what would you like to see on Technique Tuesday? And a few of them came up with some really stellar solutions. I do kind of bank all of the suggestions that you make for future Technique Tuesdays, but I thought this was a good one because very applicable to my work. And so what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be suggesting glues, gels, and mediums for when you want to apply collage to your work, and just kind of touching on a few of those techniques 2. So I look forward to seeing you then, but don't forget you can always watch this on catch up. You might even be watching this on catch up right now. If so, drop me a line. I love to hear from you. It's always great to read your comments. And of course, if you possibly can, share this among your artistic community, because a share is worth a fortune to me, because my little YouTube channel is growing as we speak. Thank you very much for taking the time to join me for this demonstration. Well done for getting to the end of it. I think we sort of geeked out, didn't we, for all the watercolourists today. But take lots of care of yourselves, won't you, no matter where you are in the world, and I will catch up with you very soon. Take care, lovely people.